The Cold War, a period of intense geopolitical tension that gripped the globe, drastically shifted the world order. Unfolding in the aftermath of World War II, this prolonged conflict was not one of direct military engagement between the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Instead, it was a clash of ideologies, a battle between two diametrically opposed systems of political, economic, and social beliefs. The United States, leading the Western Bloc, championed democracy and capitalism, embracing the principles of individual freedom, private property, and free market economics. On the other side of the spectrum, the Soviet Union, at the helm of the Eastern Bloc, propagated communism, a system characterized by state ownership of resources and means of production, with a vision of creating a classless society. This ideological divide was not just a philosophical disagreement. It was a fundamental rift that shaped the global landscape. The world was essentially carved into two spheres of influence, with nations aligning themselves either with the capitalist West or the communist East. This division was not just political, but also penetrated the realms of economy, culture, and even sports. In Europe, the division was starkly visible with the Iron Curtain, a metaphorical barrier that divided the continent into Western Europe with its capitalist democracies, and Eastern Europe under the influence of Soviet communism. The most potent symbol of this divide was the Berlin Wall, a physical barrier splitting the city of Berlin and, by extension, the world into two. These divisions led to the creation of military alliances. The Western Bloc formed the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, a collective defense pact against potential Soviet aggression. Conversely, the Soviet Union led the formation of the Warsaw Pact, a similar alliance among Eastern Bloc countries. The world had been split in two, creating a global chessboard for the superpowers. This division set the stage for the intricate dance of power, influence, and tension that characterized the Cold War era, with profound implications for the global order that we'll continue to explore in the next scenes. The Cold War was not just a standoff between two superpowers, it was a series of conflicts fought on foreign lands. Now let's dive into the concept of proxy wars, a term that has its roots firmly planted in the soil of the Cold War. Proxy wars were essentially indirect conflicts where the United States and the Soviet Union, instead of clashing head-on, supported opposing sides in other countries' wars. This was their chessboard, and the nations embroiled in these wars were the pawns. One of the earliest examples was the Korean War. It was a brutal conflict that tore the Korean peninsula apart, and it was essentially a tug-of-war between communism and capitalism. The US sided with South Korea, and the Soviet Union with North Korea. The war ended in a stalemate, but the scars of this conflict are still visible today, with the Korean peninsula remaining divided. Then we have the Vietnam War, another battlefield of ideologies. This time, North Vietnam, supported by the Soviet Union, squared off against South Vietnam, backed by the United States. This war was not only devastating for Vietnam, but also sparked off widespread anti-war protests in the United States, showing how these proxy wars could impact societies far removed from the actual battlefield. And let's not forget the Afghan War. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, prompting the United States to support the Afghan resistance, known as the Mujahideen. This conflict, unfortunately, gave birth to extremist groups that continue to plague global security today. These proxy wars, fought in far-flung corners of the globe, had profound impacts. They caused immense human suffering, economic devastation, and political upheaval in the nations directly involved. They also heightened global tensions, as any local conflict had the potential to spiral into a full-blown nuclear war between the two superpowers. These proxy wars, fought under the shadow of the Cold War, left deep scars on the world. An unseen but deadly facet of the Cold War was the relentless arms race. The United States and the Soviet Union found themselves locked in a fierce competition, each striving to outdo the other in terms of military might. This wasn't just a contest of tanks, planes, and ships. The real game changer was the development of nuclear weapons. As both superpowers raced to amass these devastating armaments, the world held its breath. The fear of nuclear war became a pervasive part of life, casting a long, ominous shadow over global politics and society. Remember, this was a time when schoolchildren were taught to duck and cover under their desks, a futile gesture against the destructive power of a nuclear blast. But it wasn't just the fear of destruction that marked this arms race. The race to develop the most powerful weapons also had significant economic and social repercussions. A staggering amount of resources were poured into military and defense budgets, resources that could have been used for social programs, infrastructure, and economic development. Think of the scientific minds, the financial resources, and the time that were dedicated to creating more advanced ways of destruction. Now, imagine if those same resources had been channeled into research for disease eradication, education, or renewable energy. The world we live in could have looked very different. The arms race also extended beyond our planet, sparking a space race that saw humans take their first steps on the moon. While this feat was a testament to human ingenuity and spirit of exploration, it was also a byproduct of the competition to establish military dominance in space. In the end, the arms race did not lead to the feared nuclear war. Instead, it led to an era of mutually assured destruction, where both superpowers understood that a nuclear war would have no winners, only devastation on an unthinkable scale. The arms race not only fueled fear and tension, but also swallowed resources that could have been used for development. The legacy of this race is still felt today, as nations grapple with the challenge of nuclear disarmament and the pursuit of a more peaceful world. Beyond the physical wars and the arms race, the Cold War was also a battle of ideas, a fierce ideological conflict between two fundamentally different socio-economic systems, capitalism and communism. On one side, we had the United States, the champion of capitalism and democracy, advocating for free markets, private ownership, and individual freedom. They believed in the power of competition and consumer choice, arguing that these forces drive innovation and efficiency, leading to economic growth and prosperity. On the other side stood the Soviet Union, the standard-bearer of communism, promoting state ownership, planned economy, and class equality. They argued that capitalism was exploitative, creating a vast disparity between the rich and the poor. They believed that only through the abolition of private property and the establishment of a classless society could true equality and social justice be achieved. This ideological clash was not confined within the borders of the superpowers. It spread across the globe, influencing politics, economics, and culture in numerous countries. Both the United States and the Soviet Union were keen to expand their spheres of influence, not just territorially, but ideologically as well. They launched extensive propaganda campaigns to promote their respective ideologies and discredit the other. Radio broadcasts, films, literature, art, and even sports were used as tools to shape public opinion. The United States' Voice of America and the Soviet Union's Radio Moscow reached millions of listeners around the world, broadcasting their narratives in multiple languages. In the midst of these propaganda wars, cultural exchanges also took place. Jazz musicians from America toured the Soviet Union, while Soviet ballet troupes performed in the United States. These exchanges were attempts to showcase the cultural superiority of each system, but they also allowed some degree of mutual understanding and appreciation to emerge. The ideological battles of the Cold War shaped global perspectives and politics, the effects of which are still visible today. From the democratic revolutions in Eastern Europe to the ongoing debates around economic inequality and social justice, the ideological legacy of the Cold War continues to reverberate in our world. The Cold War ended, but its impact on the global order remains. As we headed towards the late 20th century, the Cold War's icy grip began to thaw. The Berlin Wall, a symbol of division, came tumbling down in 1989. 2 years later, the Soviet Union itself disintegrated, signaling the end of the Cold War. Yet the world didn't simply return to its pre-Cold War state. The immediate aftermath was a period of uncertainty and flux. The United States stood as the sole superpower. while Russia and the nations born from the Soviet Union's ashes grappled with their new identities. The ideological, political, and economic divisions carved out during the Cold War didn't fade away instantly. Many, in fact, persisted and evolved. The Cold War's legacy is seen in the continued conflicts in places like Korea and Afghanistan, where the seeds of discord were sown during the proxy wars. The arms race left a world bristling with nuclear weapons, an ever-present reminder of the destructive potential humanity has at its fingertips. Furthermore, the Cold War's end heralded the dawn of a multipolar world. The power dynamics shifted from a bipolar world dominated by two superpowers to a more complex system with multiple influential players, including China, the European Union, and others. The ideological battles of the Cold War also left lasting impressions. The promotion of democracy and capitalism by the West and the counter-push of communism by the East created ideological divisions that have shaped nations and their policies to this day. In essence, the Cold War sculpted the contours of the modern world. While the intense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union may have ended, the world they shaped through their conflict remains. A world still grappling with the divisions, ideologies, and power dynamics born out of the Cold War era. The Cold War may be a chapter of the past, but its echoes continue to resonate in the world order today.